Making a few minutes for me today. I really appreciate that. I'm sure it's like really busy your first week, right? On the job?
Yes, this is day 5. So things have been going really well, and it's just hard to believe that I'm fortunate enough to be in this position and to fill this role.
That is fabulous. Well, congratulations. So tell me just really quickly a little bit about the swearing in. What was the formal procedure like?
It was hard to know what to expect. It was very exciting. We got to go into the Senate chamber, which is always a unique experience because walking into the chamber and feeling like you're in a room where so many important things are being done, things that are so much more important than any one individual, is a very awe-inspiring feeling. And to be in that chamber at all is so amazing. So we got to have our family and friends come in as guests, which I was very fortunate to do. And then one of the first orders of business was, and there's a lot of pageantry, I think,
Sure.
as well as part of that. But we were fortunate to come to the front for those of us that were newly elected or that were reelected. And all of us went to the front, and the Chief Justice swore us in as a group. There's 21 senators, and I believe 7 of us actually were up there getting sworn in again, maybe a few more of us. It was a really unique opportunity to feel like you were living civics, I guess. And then we signed essentially to say that we were ready and willing and able to fill this position. And it's now hanging on my wall already.
Yay. You already have it framed and on your wall, huh?
Already framed it on the wall. I also have, excitingly, this week, my district map came back framed and ready to hang on the wall. So it's been a great week of firsts.
Excellent. Well, so how do you balance? I don't know exactly how it works, and probably a lot of people who might be reading my article that are in the industry. How do you balance working, doing this on the side, right? And then doing your other job as well?
It's definitely challenging. So I am only working probably an hour or so a evening for Edlen right now, just catching up on emails. When anything urgent comes up, my colleagues will text, which has happened a couple times, and just ask a question because that I can easily get back to them on. It flags it a little more quickly for me than checking email, which generally happens in the evening when I return from the legislature. And I was fortunate to have wonderful colleagues and a very understanding executive team who have allowed me to do this. And I've transitioned most of my accounts to my colleagues. So not so much is coming in right now because I transitioned everything ahead of time before leaving. I
Okay.
spoke to my clients, so they're aware that I will be returning in June.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask. So session is through until June.
It's 120 days, so
Okay.
February 6th through June 5th. And it's a very hard stop at midnight.
So you still keep your job, right, at Edlin, and you're there, but essentially you're working somewhere else for 120 days, huh?
Correct. And it's wonderful because it's a unique feature of Nevada in that we have citizen legislators. So I think it's important to bring the perspective of so many different Nevadans into the state house and into legislation that we're looking at. Whereas in other states, it's a full-time role. So you're essentially a full-time legislator, or as some people would look at it, a full-time politician instead of a citizen legislator. So it's a different path in Nevada. I think it's more challenging in some ways because I've been saving up for a long time to even do this. If I was fortunate enough to win, I laugh because, especially for my husband, he's a manager at Costco. People say, "Oh, you guys must be rich now." And we get paid minimum wage for only 60 of the 120 days we serve. So it's challenging for those of us that take this on and that do this. And so you have to really love being able to take part in this process and give back to the community and try to pass legislation that you feel like will help your neighbors, because it's not an easy thing to leave home, leave your family behind. And our capital is a good 7-hour drive from where I live.
Okay.
I'm living up north in the state in Carson City.
for during this period. Yeah.
Correct.
So it really is public service you're really serving because it's not a high paying role at all.
At all.
Yeah. It's so exciting to me to have somebody that's in the industry, especially in Nevada, serving in the state Senate. So tell me a little bit about how your experience, how you think you'll use that in your new role here.
One thing I'm excited about and I'm really looking forward to is we've never had a tourism caucus before. So I'm going to be helping head up and chair the very first tourism caucus in the legislature here. And the beauty of it being something so new is that we can really make it into what we want it to be. I'm looking to get our members of the industry involved and do a lot of outreach and see how we can get our constituents involved. And it's not just us up here, but I think it's so important because when legislation does come before the whole body, having an understanding of what it is that the tourism industry really does is helpful. So when bills come before us that involve the industry, which inevitably happens, we have a voice that says, hey, let me explain this. This is how it really affects us. And now having a larger caucus so we can explain that to a lot of our members before they're looking to vote on legislation, I think will be helpful. The great thing is that we can agree and we can agree to disagree, but at least we're able to bring that perspective of the industry into the legislature when bills are being voted on.
Is there one industry related piece of legislation or something that you're looking to champion for the industry at all?
Right now, in a lot of the bills that I brought forward are things I've heard from my neighbors on doors. I can tell you about one bill. It's not industry related, but I'm very excited about it. Yesterday was a really important and exciting day for me because I dropped off my very first bill. And how the process works is you drop off your bill draft, which then is officially turned into a bill and referred to committee in the assembly or a Senate chamber. And so for me, that was very exciting because I'll have my first official bill coming soon, I guess. But my first bill, which I dropped off yesterday, is a living organ donor bill. And Nevada is one of just a few states where insurance companies can discriminate against organ donors, health and life insurance, by saying either we'll raise your premium or we won't accept you entirely. It's been shown looking at medical records and looking at living organ donors that the health challenges that they face are the same as what I would face as not being a living organ donor. So they're not a higher risk. And it's really unfortunate that they can give the gift of life and have to pay for it by not being able to get coverage. Something that someone here in the state brought to me, and I wanted to make a change. One thing that was exciting to me is for getting sponsors on that bill, I was able to get sponsors from the leaders of both the Democratic and Republican chambers from both houses have signed on to this bill, as well as a number of members. So it was important to me to have bipartisan legislation and to make sure we were speaking with members of both houses. And so being able to drop that off yesterday, because I do think it's important legislation, was really exciting.
That's great. Wow, you're hitting the ground running pretty quickly and even having support from both sides. That's fantastic. Congratulations. I'll have to track it and you'll have to let me know how it goes.
I'm very excited. And then yesterday afternoon, I chaired my first committee meeting. So it was a big day yesterday.
And you are chair of what committee is it?
Natural Resources.
All right. You're also a member of the Commerce, one of the
Commerce and Labor and Growth and Infrastructure.
Okay. Have you had that meeting yet?
We have, yes. Both of those committees have already met as well on Wednesday. And then I chaired on Thursday. So usually my Commerce and Labor and Growth and Infrastructure will be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Natural Resources Tuesday, Thursdays.
That's pretty incredible that you chair a committee already as a freshman, right?
I feel very fortunate to be able to do so because we have a few caucus members who aren't chairing, whether because they wish not to or for other reasons. And so I feel really, really fortunate that I get to chair as a freshman, and natural resources is not something I necessarily have a lot of experience with coming from tourism hospitality. I know what I know. And so there's a lot of learning, and I've been taking so many meetings trying to be a sponge and gather as much knowledge as I can. And I always hear the expression drinking from a fire hose, and it feels a lot like that because there's so much to learn to try to be effective. The one policy I can always stand by is that I'll always listen. I'll be as respectful as I can. And while I may not always agree with people, Joe, my husband and I don't always agree all the time either. So you can't agree with anyone all of the time. And it's just important to listen and to be respectful and then to make that vote. So it'll be a challenging year with water issues in the state.
I happened to be there for the chamber preview that was at the Las Vegas Convention Center a few weeks ago, and they had Bruce Babbitt there, and I'm assuming, does that fall under the natural resources? I had never really heard of the term dead pool until I was in my hotel listening to the news, and then of course they had a panel there talking about water issues and how important it was and some of the things that they were trying to do. So that will fall under your committee.
All water falls under this.
Yeah.
Water, wildlife, mining, farming, almost anything you can think of that has to do with land management will fall under natural resources.
Well, that's a big one then. It sounds like a challenge in the years ahead.
Yes.
So how is Edlen supporting your efforts? So they've helped transition some of your clients, and then you'll jump back in June. And then when's your next session after that?
We meet biennially, so every other year. Okay. It's a little different. So most state legislatures meet every year. So for us, when we're budgeting, we have to budget for 2 years at a time, which makes things a little more challenging. And with 120 days, and that's written into our Constitution, we have to be out of here by midnight on that 120th day. So it makes things very busy. We have a day where bills have to pass out of first committee and they have to pass out of first house. And all of those times tend to get very crazy around the building. So this will be my first time going through that. And it does make me a little nervous.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. That's interesting how it works there versus some of the other places.
That's part of how we have a citizen legislature, because you could imagine the toll it takes on an organization to say goodbye to some of their team members for 120 days as is. But imagine if they were doing that for 120 days every year or 5-6 months every year. So that's part of how we're able to have a citizen legislature.
So they've been obviously very supportive of you doing this. Do you have any advice for anybody else in the industry who might be either doing public service like you, or even just jumping in and advocating for the industry? You have done that throughout your career and been active in volunteering in different organizations. So what advice do you have for anybody that might be watching that's in the industry?
There's such a feeling of being able to help your neighbors and being able to help your community. So I would absolutely encourage anyone who's interested to reach out to me, to speak to their local elected officials. I would look into local, state, and federal opportunities, especially on a state level and on a local level. There's commissions. I served on the Commission on Tourism for Nevada. So I would look into opportunities on a local or state level as to boards or commissions they might be able to join. And I would look to local officials or state officials that they really like or respect and see if they can volunteer in their office and learn more about what they're doing on a daily basis. Because on a federal level, it can be a little hard if you're living in Michigan and that federal official is spending most of their time in DC to volunteer. But working for someone on a local or state level, they can really get an idea of what the job entails, what parts of it get them excited. And when people come and talk to me, I ask what issues are most important to them, because that could determine, is a county commission, is a city council seat, is a state legislative seat, is looking at a federal office. It really depends on issues and what excites you the most. For me, in 2019, I was able to work with now retired state senator, who's still one of my closest friends, Senator Joyce Woodhouse, get legislation passed for a good friend here in the industry whose son had died from undiagnosed childhood cancer. And we were able to create a rare disease advisory council for the state, continuing education for medical professionals on the diagnosis of rare disease, and communication in schools in the state on the importance of annual examinations. And the license plate that's currently on my car is the funding mechanism for the Rare Disease Advisory Council. So being able to help people on the state level, that's what excites me, which is why the state legislature was the best path for me to pursue. But for everyone, it's different. And if it's local ordinances, then that might be a different path than the one I followed. There's nothing like the feeling of knowing that you can help your neighbors and help people in the state. And I think that's why you do this. So I would say volunteer, look for local boards and commissions, reach out to me because I'm always happy, especially as someone from the industry, to answer any questions they may have. Please include my contact information because I'd love for people to reach out. Talk to Tommy Goodwin as the
Yeah.
lobbyist for the industry because he can answer a lot of questions as well. And he's so knowledgeable. The ACA does such a great job. So advocacy is one of the most important things we do. And I hope that anyone who's interested is currently looking to be a voice for our industry, lobbying and advocating, and takes part in Exhibitions Day, whether virtually or in person.
I'm planning on doing it in person this year. I've done it a couple times in person on the Hill, and it's just such an incredible experience. It really does make you feel like what you say matters, and being able to have access to whether it's staff or the actual representative or senator is pretty incredible. I encourage everybody to participate too. Well, thank you so much for making some time for me today, Julie. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And
You're
I'll look
welcome.
forward to hopefully seeing you in person down the road.